Well, good morning and welcome, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Dorset Council's General Licensing Committee on Monday, the 17th of March, 2025. For the benefit of the public attending today or watching on live stream, I'm Councillor Derek Beer, Chair of the committee, and my Vice Chair is Councillor Louise Bown. Thank you. The meeting's being live streamed, as I say, and will be available to view on the Council website after the meeting. By attending this meeting, you consent to be filmed, and can I remind everyone that when you're speaking, please state your name, the ward you represent, and speak directly into the microphones so that you can be clearly heard and seen, especially by me. The officers involved today are John Newcombe, the Service Manager for Licensing and Community Safety, Aileen Powell, Licensing Team Leader, Laura Eltree, the Senior Lawyer, and Megan Rochester, Senior Democratic Services Officer, and John Miles, who was also a Democratic Services Officer. Do we have any apologies, please, Megan?
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Val Pothecary, Jill Haynes, Sarah Williams, Craig Monks, David Morgan, Kate Weller and Claudia Webb.
Thank you. Now we do a memory test. Can we confirm the minutes of the previous General Licensing Committee, which was on Wednesday, the 23rd of October? Can I have everyone agree? You're all bluffing. Thank you very much. Anyone against? No? Lovely. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No? Thank you. And are there any questions or statements from the public, Megan? No? Thank you. In that case, we move straight to the street trading policy. And this is for consideration. I know there's an awful lot of work gone into this by John and his team. And we'll now ask John Newcombe to introduce the report. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. This is our new Dorset Council street trading policy. We have previously had some street trading policies prior to this one, but this is a brand new one covering the whole of the Dorset Council area. Members will be aware this came to committee prior to going out to a full 12-week public consultation. And now I've come back before you today, Chair, just to run through the responses to those. And we've actually adapted the policy in a few places, and we've got some decisions to make about a couple of different things in terms of how we're going to designate the streets and our responses to some of those issues raised as part of that consultation. So there's 4 recommendations today, Chair. One is to review those responses, and I'm going to put my screen up on the display shortly, and we'll run through those. It will take a little bit of time, but hopefully I'll keep you all with me, and we can discuss any sort of concerns or any points or any differing opinions, of course, contrary to my recommendations, which is why we're here, Chair, really. I've had a look at all of those responses and had a think about how best to respond to those, but you may well have different views, which is fine, of course. Street trading, the legislation's a bit of an old bear, and it's actually quite complicated. Once we've decided what we're going to do, we need to publish our responses, publish our sort of a plan of action, if you like, the streets that we're going to designate, how we're going to designate them, and we need to publish a series of notices in the local press. But we've done it this way round to try and give as much flexibility as possible as to how we approach this. So we pulled together that draft policy, sent it out for full public consultation. We'll run through the responses, and then we'll decide where we go from there. That does mean a second period of consultation, I'm afraid, but very often there's normally no responses to that. So it's 28 days, notice in the press, and then wait and see. If there are some responses and they're meaningful, we'll bring them back again and we'll talk through them. I'm not expecting there to be, but there may be. And if not, the recommendation is that the policy is presented to Council for adoption, and then we'll publish those designations as required. So yeah, street trading, It's been out to consultation, 12 weeks, full policy consultation in line with guidance, best practice, 4th of November to the 26th of January. A consultation team, very helpful, pulled together a full consultation pack for us and then pulled together this report. The report from the consultation team, I've adapted it slightly, Chair, just to make it easier. So the report that came back, I've added in an extra column with my response to it, just to make it a bit more simple to go through, or a bit simpler to go through, because there were, you know, for something which is potentially a bit of a dry subject, we had quite a good response, 62. And then as well, what I've added is a revised draft policy. Now, unfortunately, the published policy that went into the agenda pack is missing the track changes. So I've got my version, which shows clearly what we've changed, and I'll run through that as well afterwards. So the plan is, unless you say otherwise, to designate all of the streets in Dorset, in our area, Dorset Council Administrative Area, as consent streets. So you need a consent to street trade in Dorset, basically. Now, the reason for that is, if we just designate some streets, say we designate North Street and South Street, and we go down there and someone's trading without a licence, then they could just quite easily move to East Street or West Street, and we end up with this sort of chasing people around, which can be very time-consuming and quite labour-intensive. So the plan is that we designate all streets as consent streets, and then we have a separate part of the policy where we de-designate. So we may have a couple of areas where at a later date, and I'll talk through some of those responses. Well, a couple of the town councils have concerns. So there's provision within the policy to de-designate if we need to. I'm not planning on doing that, but that's there if we need to do that. Now that may well result in a need to formally advertise, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But that's the plan. I couldn't think of a better way to do it, Chair. I've done this for quite a while, and that's sort of the best solution that I could come up with. So if I show you, share my screen, and then I will. You should be able to see what I'm. Yes. Yes, of course.
Are you happy, are members happy to keep the questions to the end of the report? And then, are you happy with that? So you go all the way through and we take questions at the end. Is that okay? Unless there's anything really burning on the way through that you want to deal with. Is that okay? Are everyone happy with that? Yeah.
I'm happy either way, Chair. So we can keep questions till the end, or if I'm talking about something which we want to discuss, then we can stop, pause, and talk through it. No problem. Thank you. Okay, so this is the consultation report, which is in the agenda pack. I'm just going to whiz through. I'll show you the plan. So we've had responses all over Dorset, which is really helpful. And the vast majority of people agree that it's a good idea, either strongly agree or agree, which is, again, very helpful. And then if I just have a little look at it's small, but I'll explain. So the first sort of page of responses, there's no real, nothing really much to say in here. There's a number of different responses which potentially don't either need a response, or we don't need to go through those responses. I mean, one of them, for example, is that this should be left up to town councils. Well, we're the licensing authority under the legislation, so it's up to us. There is provision to work with town councils on street trading, and I'll go through that shortly. The first time that we've sort of come across something which needs a bit of a response is on page 11, which is response number 10. So this responder's asking if there's a simpler, cheaper way of doing this, potentially on a zero intervention basis. Well, we're doing it as cheap as we can, so it'll be cost recovery. We won't be making a profit out of this. Our fees will be set at such a level that we actually cover the cost of administrative function, and also a low-level enforcement as well. And it's the view of the licensing authority that we need controls, because if we don't have any controls, we'll have a free-for-all. We'll have people being able to sell whatever they want, wherever they want. There'll be potentially an over-reliance on peddler certificates by people who aren't acting as peddlers, so they're not moving from door to door, from customer to customer. They're standing still and maybe using more than just a small mobile aid to assist them. So it's the view of the licensing authority, and so that's, you know, us, as it were, that we do need street trading controls, and that is mirrored by the fact that we've got some existing policies across Dorset. The next response is about access, and each application on its own merit. So if somebody asks us to put a stall and they're going to block the pavement, it won't be approved. Or if somebody has a licence, a permit, consent from us, and they're taking up too much space, more than they've been allocated, again, we can deal with that, and that would be a contravention of the conditions on their licence. The next one, response 12, is about displaying licences. There's provision within the policy for that. Response 13 is about goods on privately owned land. And this is the first time I'm proposing an amendment to the policy. So there were quite a number of responses here about Dorset being a rural area where quite a lot of people sometimes sell things at the garden gate, and that might be eggs, or it might be plants, or it might be, you know, other goods. And so we've looked at this and we've tried to come up with a solution that works. So we've put an exemption in, and I'll run through that a little bit later when we look at the policy, but it's on page 6, and it basically says that we're adding an exemption where we've got private dwelling houses selling locally produced goods within the curtilage of their own property, or at the entrance to their own property. So we should be able to cover those, which means we're not going to make them apply for a licence. Essentially, they'll be exempted. The next response was about Bridport Market, and again about access. And this is probably a good point to talk about markets. So chartered markets are not included. They're exempted by legislation. We have the ability to further exempt any other areas that we might choose to. And Bridport Market could, in theory, we could exempt that. However, I've been speaking to a lot of the town councils, and they do sometimes need enforcement, which involves an officer going out, seeing, you know, what the problem is, speaking to the seller, speaking to the town council, and maybe talking about taking enforcement action if somebody's trading without a consent. Now, without designating those roads, we can't do that. And that's been the problem. And it was a problem when I went to Bridport, that they had a trader there who was refusing to pay their pitch fee to the town council. And I couldn't take enforcement action against him because it wasn't a designated street. And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to come up with a solution for that. And the solution is that the town council apply for a multi-user licence from us. And the fees are low. They're just an admin fee with maybe a small additional fee for maybe 1 or 2 visits a year to take some enforcement, or just to see that everything's working properly. And that will give multi-user licences to the town council. And then the town council, they can have a commercial arrangement with their pitch holders. That's up to them. But if somebody rocks up and they start trading at the town council market without permission, they can contact us and we can come down and deal with it. So it is sort of the best of both worlds. And so that's my proposal for Bridport, and that's also my proposal for Lyme Regis as well. Now, if Bridport or Lyme Regis or any of the other town councils decide they don't want to do that, that they want an area of their land exempted, then we can do that as well. So it gives us real flexibility here, and it will be a consultation process that we'll sit down, we'll talk to them. What have you got going on? What are the problems? Are you going to need our help? And then we'll work a solution up. And this policy allows us to do that. So, hopefully we've got it just about right. Might be a good point to pause there, because that is quite an area for discussion.
Myself, I really welcome this because it seems a common sense approach. But Matt, you've got a question?
Firstly, thank you for the presentation, and also the way you've laid out the report is excellent with the responses. So thank you for that. In terms of consultations with town councils, is there a view on sort of timeframes for those consultations? I'm just wary of things getting bogged down. So how long would that process take if a town council was to approach Dorset Council?
We've made it really flexible. So I started talking to the town councils about this about 18 months ago, and I did a preliminary consultation with them, document. I haven't included it within this report, but the way we drafted the policy was on the back of those consultations with the town councils and with other partners, so sort of food safety, police, highways, etc. So we've already spoken to them. And it's relatively straightforward because once we publish this policy, we can adapt it, we can amend it, and we can bring it back to this committee. If we want to exempt, say, for argument's sake, we want to exempt Marine Parade in Lyme Regis, then I'll add that into the policy. We'll bring it back here, talk it through. I'll have a response from the town council as to why we're doing it, what it looks like, what the ramifications might be, and then we can get that signed off. So it's probably about 6 weeks.
You happy with that? Yeah. From my point of view, I think it's really good to cover all of the streets, because otherwise you can have one scampering off to another street doing something totally inappropriate and causing a nuisance that's not regulated. I also think personally it's really good for town councils to have a bit of a proper backup to support them when things are not going particularly well. Any more comments, please? No? Well, thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. So 15 and 16 responses, again, about garden gate sales, and yes, we've excluded those. Response 17 is about the quay in Wareham. That will be added to the list of exempted areas. There's a small market that happens down there. The next few responses are just positive and no response required. Yeah, so this response 21, and this is a good one as well. So this is about bricks and mortar businesses that pay their business rates and pay, their electricity and their bills, and it, can get really expensive. And then all of a sudden somebody rocks up outside selling exactly the same thing at a massively lower price and undermining their business. So there's already provision in the policy to deal with that, because the plan is that we do a consultation on each application and we make sure it's a suitable pitch. And if you're trying to sell coffee outside a coffee shop, it won't be approved, it won't be granted. So we're already able to deal with that and look after our existing businesses. So this is about offering variety. It's about adding to the community, adding to vibrancy, adding to sort of opportunities for entrepreneurs as well, who might not have enough money to pay for business premises. So we're not doing this to try and shut shops down. That's not what this is all about. Okay, so just whizzing through those. So 24 was about some issues up in Shaftesbury that they had with their markets during COVID and their stalls. So primarily highways issues, these ones. And so the Highways Authority is a respondent to any consultation on any applications, as are the town councils. So if Shaftesbury Town Council don't like something, or we consult with them and they have some issues, just let us know, and if we can compromise or work through, we will, and if we can't, then we won't grant it. So this one's about fees again. So that was cost recovery. So it's not about making a profit. This one was about pop-ups on Portland, and so each application on its own merit as well. And there are some really quite strict conditions about leaving rubbish and having a detrimental impact on the amenity of the area. So that's already in our policy. Next response was about charities. There will be concessions for charities within the fee table. I'm sorry that we haven't bought the fee table. It's it's real chicken and egg, all of this, because until we decide what we're going to do and how big the scheme looks like and what our potential enforcement levels will look like, it's quite difficult to work out how much we're going to charge. But the way we will do it is we'll look at a street trading application, how long it will take to process, how long it will take to send out to consultation, what's a normal consultation response look like, how many officer hours will be involved in that, and that will be recharged per officer as the cost. That would be the administrative fee. And then on top of that, there's be a small enforcement fee, maybe for 1 or 2 visits a year. So we will keep the cost down as low as we can, and there'll be concessions for charities.
Just for members' clarification, when we talk about charities, obviously we've got nationally recognised charities, and then in local towns you get people, charities to support planting of trees somewhere or whatever, those really local charities. Would it be easy to recognise those and accommodate that type of thing, do you think?
Yes, it should be, because they should be registered as charities. And if they give us their charity registration number, we'll check that, make sure it's bona fide. And if it is, then they'll get the discount. What we won't be doing is offering discounts to people who say that they're a charity, registered charity, or that they're proposing on giving some of the earnings from the event to a charity, because that's really hard to check, you know, and essentially someone could send us their account saying, you know, we took £1,000 and we gave 500 to a charity, but that's outside the scope of street trading, really. You know, and we do get involved in that from street collections, and from, you know, the management of other regulatory regimes. But for street trading, if you want a charity concession, you'll need to be a registered charity, and that's the plan. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, cost recovery, again, about competition with other local businesses, so each application on its own merit. We then had a response from our food safety and port health team about would it be possible to have a minimum food hygiene rating of 3? We thought that was a good idea, so we've added that into the policy. We then had a response from Dorset Police talking about alcohol licensing. You know, it's quite common for a street trader to set up a stall to sell locally produced ciders or beers or mead or whatever it is. But what we've done, and again, this was mirrored by Public Health Dorset, is we've added some additional conditions in about Challenge 25 that actually, because if you're selling alcohol, you'll need a temporary event notice, but temporary event notices don't have conditions on them. But we can put conditions on street trading consents, so we've done it that way. If you're getting a proper premises licence, then there are already embedded conditions that include Challenge 25. So we've added that in, which you know obviously is a response of Dorset Police's response to us. Powers on street traders selling tat. So when someone comes to us, and the process for applying is in the policy, they need to tell us what they're going to be selling, what type of goods. We're not sort of proposing to be quality control on where they buy them from or how much they sell them from, but there are a number of controls on what's sold. So, you know, if someone wanted to sell machetes or vapes or something which could potentially be dangerous or stolen goods, and we can deal with those. I don't really want to get into an argument about what constitutes tat, because on a carnival night, tat's really popular, isn't it? You know, battery-powered spinning things that I might consider to be cheap and cheerful, kids absolutely love, don't they? So, you know, we will try to make sure that goods sold are appropriate and safe. As opposed to of a quality nature, shall we say? Again, we had another response about charities, which we've got those concessions, and then this response from Lyme Regis Town Council goes into quite some depth, and as I've sort of briefly alluded to, if we don't have controls, we can't control it, and so this is sort of a compromise where the streets are designated. We are therefore able to deal with any sort of enforcement, any infringements, but it's still, the town council still retains the ability to have a commercial arrangement with their pitch holders which doesn't impact on their income. So that's our proposal. So the town council take a multi-user consent. I'm not going to say sublet because legally you can't do that, but they will then have a commercial arrangement with traders about using their land and using their street trading permissions to sell their goods. And we'll stay out of that. You know, we don't take a cut or anything like that. Oh, I've made that smaller. Didn't mean to do that. Okay. Yes, so peddlers. So the peddler legislation is really old, not particularly fit for purpose. A lot of police forces don't issue peddler certificates anymore. A fair few still do, though. They're annual certificates, but they're designed for sellers to move from place to place, selling goods, going from customer to customer, and they're allowed to have, you know, permitted to have a small sort of trolley or device to assist them. To rely on a peddler certificate, you can't just rock up in the town centre, put a stall up and stay there. You can't do that. That's it. That's in breach. That then becomes street trading. And what we do, and case law is a little bit shady on this, but what we normally do is we would monitor. So we have council's own CCTV. We have our licensing officers, our patrol officers as well. And if a trader sets up and stays there, remains static, then we'll deal with them. We'll say, well, you know, we'll go and talk to them. Have you got a street trading consent? No, we haven't. Have you got a peddler certificate? Yes, we have. Well, then you should be acting like a peddler. I need you to pack up your stuff and move from place to place, from customer to customer. If you stay still for, I don't know, 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes, then we will prosecute you for illegal street trading unless you apply for a street trading consent. You know, so that gives us the power to deal with those. But without these designations, we can't deal with that because all we're doing is checking if a peddler's got a peddler certificate. And if they haven't, then we can't do anything because we don't have street trading control. So it just gets really messy.
There is a slight complication, and I'm sure this is a bit of a nonsense, but the white van that turns up on one of our car parks servicing 7 or 8 trolleys of peddlers going around our carnivals or whatever, that white van is still okay or not really?
If they're selling goods from that van, then no, they can't do that. If it's just a means of transport to get people to site and those 7 or 8 individuals have got peddler certificate, then that's fine. There's no issue with that. What this does deal with, there's a street trader in Lyme Regis who turns up with a big white van, funnily enough, and about 4 or 5 racks of clothing, and they park down on Marine Parade, and they sell their goods, and they stay there all day, and they've got a peddler certificate. And even though we can see they're not acting as a peddler and they're not moving, they're staying in the same place, we can't do anything about it because we don't have those streets designated. But as soon as we do designate them, we can go down and we can deal with that. So just to recap, if members are minded to agree to designate all of our streets as consent streets, I will then go back and have a dialogue with the town councils, in particular Bridport and Lyme Regis, probably Shaftesbury as well. Just be clear on what our intentions are and what that likely impact would be to them. If they're adamant that they don't want a particular area designated, then we could do that from the off, or if not, we can be flexible after, before we publish in the press. So yeah, so quite a big response from Lyme Regis. They make about 30k a year from street trading, and they don't want our policy to impact that, and it won't impact that. Additional exemption. This is from one of our members of Parliament about household selling good. We've done that. We've included that in. I'm near the end. Bear with me. Farmers markets again. If it's a charter market, it's already exempt, but we're allowed to. We will be able to add in any additional market streets or activities. And this is a good opportunity here as well. Even though they haven't responded as part of this policy consultation. I am aware that in our own economic development team, we're looking at potentially setting up some pop-up sites and on our land that we own and operate. And so potentially I can include those in this exemption as well, if and when that happens. We are Weymouth, so that's the Weymouth bid. They asked to be added, well, they asked to be a decision maker. I can't do that because they're not a statutory consultee, but I can include them on the list of consultees, which is what we will do. And then public health, so, you know, quite a comprehensive response from public health. I sat down with them and we went through the policy and they came back. They've asked for some additional conditions on vapes, which we've added in, on the sale of alcohol, which we've added in. This one may be slightly contentious. It's a additional condition in relation to unhealthy foods near to schools. Now, of course.
John.
So, Councillor Lesford, Dorchester West. I'm looking at this one here. Please add the objective to ensure that street trading does not negatively impact on the health and well-being of people living in Dorset. It's a good point, a good phrase, but how do you do that? Because you could say selling gin, selling alcohol, selling some of the food that's unhealthy could, it's a subjective matter, could negatively impact on the health of people of Dorset. So I think that's a difficult one to hone down.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the overarching objective for Public Health Dorset is to improve the health of those people living in Dorset, and we've actually gone through this and had quite a good discussion about how we might achieve that. And so what they're looking to do is to add additional controls for alcohol in terms of not selling to anyone who's underage. Controls about vapes being sold near schools, and then the sale of unnutritious or non-nutrition foods. So those are those foods that are high in fat, sugar or salt. But this is just for an hour before school and just for an hour after school. It's not our proposal that we would include our ice cream sellers in that. So I think it's going to be a little bit kind of suck it and see how we get on. But all this essentially does is this adds Public Health Dorset as a consultee, each application on its own merits. If an application comes in and Public Health Dorset make a representation against that, then we'll consider it as a licensing authority. And if it makes sound sense, we'll do it. And if it doesn't make sense, we won't do it. And potentially that might involve a discussion with the applicant as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. John, I don't know if you're aware, but there's recently been some news about slushies and the chemicals in those causing health problems for young people. I don't know how you would incorporate that sort of thing into the policy. Would you at all, or is that covered already?
Thank you, Chair. I think it could be a discussion with the applicant. I think if an applicant's looking for a mobile consent and they're planning on going and parking outside a primary school and selling high sugar slushy drinks, then Public Health may well object to that. And we may well go back to the applicant and say, Public Health have objected to this. We're minded to grant your permission, but to exclude this type of goods from the sale. What would your response to that be? And then we would maybe have a bit of a to-in and fro-in and a compromise about how we best proceed. So this, you know, the whole point of having street trading controls is to deal with road traders, to deal with people who are trading without a licence, but also to encourage business and to encourage community wellbeing, vibrancy, economic development. So I think it's going to be very much like in licensing, the balance between what the applicant wants and what the local community wants, and trying to reach a compromise in the middle. So that would be our approach.
There's loads of common sense, wasn't there? I'm really glad with the common sense about the ice cream van, because it's what's happened for years, isn't it? And I think if we said we're going to stop ice cream vans outside schools, that would cause a backlash, but that's brilliant. Yeah, just throw that in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not, you know, we're not trying to be overzealous or you know, be the fun police. I love taking my kids down to the ice cream van when they were little after school. You know, it was quite expensive, but I you know, I like the look on their faces after. Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, so challenge 25 on alcohol, we've done that. The other good one was about, and you know, Councillor Fry touched on it, about the sale of alcohol, which potentially is carcinogenic, which potentially is damaging, and there's an additional condition here about not selling something along those lines near to a facility offering support to people with substance misuse problems, you know, or undergoing treatment. So that we've added that in as well because we thought that was very sensible. And then last but by no means least was another a question about charter markets and community activities. So if you wanted to set up a small community event and have some stall holders, you know, jumble sale, that kind of thing, actually, if you charged a nominal admission fee for that, that would exempt you from street trading. So say you charge 20p or 50p or £1 to come in, then you wouldn't need a street trading consent. So there's another flexibility within the policy to assist with charities who you know, might have a small charity-based event coming up. Okay, so that's the end of the consultation responses. Is there anything sort of pressing, or have we talked through?
Well, I just think this is an amazing policy that has encompassed common sense wherever and offering support to local authorities. So from my own point of view, I think it's really, really good. But over to you.
Yeah, Councillor Les, Dorset West again. This is just a point for clarification for public who are watching this. You said we've had 62 responses to the survey, and yet you've listed 42. And I think just for clarification, it's worth covering why there, because people may ask questions.
Thank you, Chair. So my original draft report actually said 42 because I was going on the basis of how many responses there were in the consultation report. But actually there were another 20 responses who didn't write anything. So they ticked and they took part, but they didn't actually make any particular comments. So I think there were 62 overall responses received to the consultation. I think so, Chair. It does, yes, Chair, yeah. Even if you don't ask a question or raise a concern.
Sorry, I should have said earlier, Councillor Matt Bell, Radipole Ward. Just on the point about slushies, it's the glycerol content, not the sugar content, that's causing young children to go into shock, unfortunately, occasionally. So pretty serious stuff. I know that because I've got a 6-year-old who's up in arms about the new household ban on slushies. Just going back to what I think was a brilliant point about sort of not replicating the trade of brick and mortar stores, you know, outside. You gave the example of having a pop-up cafe outside a existing cafe. Completely agree with the point. In the policy, I'm just seeking a bit of reassurance here and clarity. I think it's points 6.2. There are lots of points within that section where a set distance is given, so distances outside of schools and that sort of thing. Whereas the section for that reads, the goods being sold complement and do not conflict with the goods sold by other established retailers within the vicinity. Just while we're in a public forum and sort of we may have interested parties watching, how will that vicinity judgment be made? And are there any situations within crowded town centres, such as Weymouth, where I'm based? Is that the reason for not putting the distance measure in? Because you've got so much variety in a small space. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is a really good question. What constitutes vicinity? So, I mean, we could, in theory, put immediate vicinity. So if I take a sort of a licensing term, which is probably most helpful here, when the Licensing Act came in, they had to adapt the Act in terms of who could make representations. So it used to be interested parties. It was changed to any other person. And there used to be a vicinity test. And then there was some case law, which goes back to Kensington, Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, with the concert hall there, where they messed up their consultation. And then a lot of councils stopped doing those statutory consultations because they you know, you could do 50 metres, 20 metres, 100 metres, and it was entirely subjective as to what you considered to be the vicinity. I think we'll have a common sense approach to this. So if you know, if somebody wants to set up a stall selling exactly the same thing right outside or adjacent to or very close to, then there'll be the potential there for that to be refused. However, if it, you know, a fair distance away. But I think Councillor is right. Each application is going to be slightly different because, you know, town centres are different, aren't they? And the way high streets operate are different. And so the way this application process works is we don't have designated pitches. So we don't say, you know, that we've got 30 pitches, which number would you like? The way this works is you go and find somewhere you want to trade from, come to us and we'll have a look at it. You know, and we'll talk to our consultative group, we'll talk to those local businesses nearby, right next door, and we'll just do a bit of a common sense assessment on that. And, you know, if there's no significant objections, then we'll grant it. But what we can do as well is we can grant on a temporary trial basis. So we've just issued, actually, a 3-month trial licence just to see how things are going. And if there's no significant issues, then that would be extended. So we could potentially do that if we needed to.
John, did you want to touch briefly on busking? And it just, I know you don't really want to, but it's something which is they can, I know nuisance can be a point, but just if you just want from members' point of view.
Thank you. I think so. We've had some quite lengthy discussions about this within the team. I think potentially what we're going to do longer term is we're going to introduce a buskers charter, which will be what we would expect from you if you come to Dorset and you want to busk. Because, we don't want to stifle, you know, creativity and artistry, but we do want to protect residents and businesses from noise nuisance. Busking isn't licensable, so if you come down with your acoustic guitar and you play some songs, you know, it's fine. You don't need a license for that. We've got the Live Music Act exemptions within the Licensing Act, and you know, providing it's in a workplace, and most areas are workplaces because people work there, including streets, street cleaners, etc. It's very difficult to control that through licensing. Our main lever of control is through noise nuisance. And what we would say to buskers is don't stay in the same place for too long. Don't have the volume up really loud. Don't make a racket. If somebody comes out and says, you know, you're really disturbing them, move, do something different, go somewhere else. You know, don't make other people's lives an inconvenience. So we work very closely within our public health and prevention teams with environmental protection, and they have some quite, you know, powerful pieces of legislation around environmental protection, noise nuisance. So in theory, if a busker came down, made a racket, refused to move, even though it's not licensable, they could still get a noise abatement notice. And if they breach that, there's some quite substantial fines for that, Chair.
Thank you. Of course, what some person's wonderful noise is other person's annoyance, isn't it? But as you say, it's a difficult area. Are there any other comments, please? Les.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Les, Dorchester West. John, what records are you going to ask the street traders to keep themselves? I get the point that the council keeps records if they tell us where they're going to go and if they apply for a licence. But what happens actually if they don't apply for a licence? If they just rock up at a certain town or a certain village or a certain street, decide to sell there and nobody makes a complaint, nobody knows about it, does that mean it's all okay? Or should we have an obligation on the street traders to keep their own records, which should match up with the council records?
So it's another good question, Chair. It's actually something we haven't thought about before. So I did have a brief discussion with Councillor Fry about this just earlier on today. I think we may well add something in from, obviously if it's a static store, we know where they're going to be, and we'll have that set out on a plan. We'll probably put some markers in the ground just so they don't sort of spread outside of that area. But with mobile traders, who are able to move around, I think actually it probably is quite important that we do ask them to keep records of where they're trading, where they've been trading. So I'm probably going to add a little tweak into the policy if members are minded to approve that.
Are there any other points, or would you like to move to the recommendations now? Any more questions or points? I'd just like once again to thank John and his team for a really, really good and comprehensive report, which seems to have been a safety net for everything and will support our local communities and make sure that people are fair. Les?
I'd just like to recognise, I think on behalf of all of us here, the comments from the public and the people who have taken the time and the trouble to add to this and help make this policy a good policy. And I think it's worthy that it does go out for consultation again. So I'm happy to propose that it goes out for consultation, and let's see what the people say. Yeah, awful, yeah.
May I have a seconder, please? Thank you. And those in favour, all show, please. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much indeed. And, whoops, as I say, thank you very, very much indeed, John, for an absolutely superb report, and convey those to your team. The fact that you've already spoken with town councils and such like and allayed their fears is really, really good. Thank you. Do we have any urgent items, please? No, thank you. And exempt business? Thank you. So once again, thank you for your attendance. It's a shame we've only got one item on the agenda again, but we won't go into that because there we go. This is really important. Makes our county a lot safer, so that's good. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.